Hello everyone, today we are here with Mr. Rodney D.Ryder. Mr. Ryder is a leading technology, intellectual property and corporate lawyer. He is a founding partner at Scriboard, a full-service commercial law firm. The text of his book, Intellectual Property and the Internet, has been acknowledged to be an authoritative work by the Supreme Court of India in its first and the only judgment on domain names. He is an advisor to Ministry of Communications and Technology on the implementation of Information Technology Act 2000. Welcome to Lawyers Club India, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you so much.
So my first question to you is, recently in a landmark judgment, Section 66A of the Act was struck down in its entirety, being violative of Article 19(1)A and not saved under Article 19(2) by the Supreme Court of India. Does the striking down of Section 66A means that the speech on the internet is completely free and completely unregulated?
Not at all, because internet freedoms, it must be remembered, have their limits. Even constitutional freedom of speech is limited. So while we are talking about fundamental rights, and make no mistake about that, every right has its limit. And it must be remembered that the section which was found unconstitutional was in itself badly drafted, though I can't say that it was badly intended. And one of the other problems was that it lacked a certain decisive implementation measures. So that aside, we have a number of laws which regulate speech as far as content is concerned. Freedom of speech is a very powerful fundamental right, but has its limits.
My next question to you is, Section 69 subclause 1 of the Information Technology Act provides enormous power to the government to monitor communications with minimal safeguards. This is further complicated by the lack of a Privacy Act, which could have ensured some protection to citizens against intrusion by the government. Do you think that we are paying the cost of security by sacrificing our privacy?
To an extent, yes, but that is not only true of India. Globally, with the rise of terrorism, we have seen governments being forced to protect its citizens, partially through surveillance and surveillance measures. So when that kicks in, you have a situation when governments actually are conducting surveillance, spying, if you use that word, on their own citizens. So it is a natural outcome of our struggle against terrorism. India has privacy safeguards in the Constitution, but what we need is an actual functioning apparatus through perhaps a Privacy Act.
So you think that there should be a specific legislation on privacy, let's say a Privacy Act?
Yes, there should be, because the specific legislation, what it does is that it puts in place a working apparatus. Privacy, like I said, is a constitutional right and has been interpreted as a constitutional right by successive Supreme Court judgments. But I can just draw a parallel with, say, the right to information. The right to information was recognized by the Supreme Court as a constitutional right in Raj Narayan's case about 30 odd years before the passing of the Right to Information Act. But despite a constitutional right, what we needed was an apparatus, a mechanism to enforce that right, a procedure to make complaints. So that's perhaps what we need vis-a-vis privacy law in India.
My next question to you is, the Information Technology Act does not provide regulatory provisions to prohibit an internet service provider, that is ISP, from controlling the internet to suit their business interests. Do you think that we should have a law regarding network neutrality?
I believe so, but more than just an India-oriented or an India-specific law, I think the global community needs to act together for a harmonized network-neutral internet. It must be remembered that service providers and internet businesses are an important pillar of internet governance. So network neutrality is important, and it's important that the government ensure it through legislation.
and everybody should have a right to free access to the internet. What are your views on that?
Yes, that is the only way in which problems like the so-called problems on governance, who should govern, because right now the reason why I'm saying is so-called is that there are entities that govern the internet. We must not forget that it's not only the government.
Right.
Internet architecture also plays a role in governance. So do service providers. So does the way existing infrastructure is laid out. So it's very important for us to look at infrastructure policies, to look at network neutrality problems, and to look at how we can create a level playing field as far as access is concerned.
My next question to you is based on the concept of digital wills. The concept of digital wills is slowly gaining popularity in India. The legislations in India presently do not recognize the concept of digital will, and in the absence of in any specific law, the execution and enforcement of the same poses a huge challenge. Should we expect a legal recognition of this concept soon?
I think this is very important because again, here is another problem of there being a framework. Now it's not as though digital wills lack any recognition, but there are aspects of the digital will which fall into a grey area. So it's important for us, if we want to make this a serious help for our citizens, we want to make it easy, we want to make it accessible, then we need to ensure that the legislation completely recognizes it, and also that there is a mechanism put in place.
My next question to you is, what is the scope of cyber and information technology laws in practice?
See, the way the modern world is structured and the way new media and the internet pervade our life, information technology cannot not be looked at. It's too important to ignore. So every practicing lawyer needs to have a knowledge of IT laws, the IT laws that pervade every aspect of life, and every aspect of law, therefore. So you have IT practice pervading criminal law. You have IT practice pervading matrimonial law, succession and wills, which we were referring to in the previous question. But apart from that, I see a great future for lawyers who are practicing in this area, because risk is moving to the internet world. So the risk that an individual faces to his reputation, a risk that a corporate faces to its reputation, is all online. Security issues are not confined to the boundary walls of a factory. They are now confined to and beyond even servers across jurisdictions. So these are growing, dynamic and exciting areas to practice in.
Right. My last question to you is, the academics of law is totally different from what exactly happens in a courtroom. What should educational institutions and students should do to bridge this gap?
I feel that while there is a gap, I don't deny that there is a gap. Over the years, law schools have done their fair bit to to bridge that gap. Now I believe that law schools can be grounds to train people in government, in law enforcement, in industry. And law schools should do their best to get industry, law enforcement down on their campuses. And that would lead to the bridging of the gap significantly. Law school should also think about moving away from conventional teaching methods. For example, the moot court, a very powerful teaching method and very much needed, should also give some time away to maybe trial advocacy, or maybe client counseling. So different skill sets can be developed in students, skill sets that they would need in the real world.
Mr. Ryder, you are a successful lawyer. So what is your message to the young budding lawyers, especially those lawyers who want to practice in information technology laws?
I think one very important thing about being a lawyer is that you get this chance, this opportunity to be a part of the justice process. And I think that is something that has always appealed to me. But another thing is that the law is so dynamic and evolving. And that means that we at every stage have to be ready for new challenges, learn new things. So I think that this is part of the challenge. And I think that anyone who accepts this challenge of learning something new every day is going to be a very successful lawyer. The other thing is ethics, honesty, and being true to everyone in society that you touch. Not only your clients, but everyone, the other side, courts, society, and being a part of the justice process. So I think this is an exciting profession for any youngster to get into.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder, for taking out time for an interaction with Lawyers Club India.
Thank you so much.